Hey everybody, it's Gomledex and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today I'm going to be playing another premiere draft of the Brothers War as part of the early access event. Thank you very much to Wizards of the Coast yet again for the early access account, and without further ado, let's hop into this draft and see what this sweet new format has in store for us today. We have a cool rare here, Gwenna Eyes of Gaia, 3 mana for a 2/3 that taps for 2 mana in any combination of colors to cast creatures or activate abilities of creatures, and whenever we cast a creature with power 5 or greater, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on Gwenna and untap it. So very cool card. Very cool kind of build around. Obliterating Bolt is probably the safest, most open option, because whatever we're doing, if we're in red, we're going to love this efficient removal. Quietus Spike is a really cool artifact as our retro artifact in the pack. Makes somebody lose half their life if we ever hit them. I'm going to play it really safe today. First draft, I tried to play a really cool kind of rampy archetype here. Today I'm going to try to get as competitive as possible and go for my limited fundamentals and see if we can draft like a really sweet maybe aggro deck here off of a pack 1 pick 1 Obliterating Bolt, potentially pack 1 pick 2 Monastery Swiftspear. This is a really good aggro card if you have a lot of cheap instants in your deck in particular, but even with cheap sorceries like Obliterating Bolt, the Swiftspear can get in for a lot of damage really quickly. This is a modern Pauper, so on all-star in mono red decks. Got a cool rare here as well, Razorlash Transmigrant. 2 mana for a 3/1 that can't block, and for 6 mana you bring it back to the board with a +1/+1 counter. Costs 4 less if your opponent has a bunch of non-basics. That's not going to happen. So 2 mana, 3/1 for 6 mana, you bring it back as a 4/2. That seems fine. It's a repeatable threat later in the game, but I really like Monastery Swiftspear. I think that's a very efficient card for an aggressive red strategy, and that's probably a lot of what red wants to do in the format. So Monastery Swiftspear, Obliterating Bolt seems like a great place to start. Mind's Eye's the retro artifact for the pack. Cool card, but a lot of mana. Kind of like a Joda's Codex from Dominaria United. Very good red card in this pack as well. We have an Excavation Explosion, which I will probably roll with. 3 mana for a sorcery, dealing 3 to any target and creating a tapped Powerstone. This shows off the Powerstone mechanic where you can get these little mana rocks that just help you cast artifacts or activate abilities. So the idea is that they help ramp you into these gigantic prototype artifacts like Spotter Thopter. But Excavation Explosion, great addition to our red deck based on how it has started. There's a Howling Mine as the retro artifact with the original artwork, which is incredibly cool, but this seems like a pretty bad card in limited if you don't have a way to tap it during your turn. There are actually a couple random ways that you can tap your own artifacts in this set. There's one green dork that's 1 mana for a 1/1, and you can tap it and tap an untapped artifact you control to get a mana of any color. So you can actually abuse Howling Mine in this format. So if you're in green, I think Howling Mine is actually a legitimately good pick, and then you just make sure to pick up a lot of those 1 mana 1/1s. Liquimetal Coating is another card. Numot the Nummy destroyed me with this card in my last draft. This is a card that the idea behind it is you get to turn your opponent's cards into artifacts and then blow them up with your artifact removal, such as Raze to the Ground, which can only destroy artifacts. I think this is main deckable in this format because there are so many big, powerful artifacts, but you usually only want like 1 copy. But cards like Liquimetal Coating can let it be to where you can run a lot of copies of artifact removal. So Liquimetal Coating, kind of a fun build around. Not like super powerful, but there's nothing in this pack that looks powerful enough for me to want to dip into another color. So I might try out the Liquimetal Coating thing. That seems pretty cool, pretty fun. Okay, now we've got an Elsewhere Flask. This is another card. I love their choices of the retro artifacts in this format. They chose basically very iconic classic artifacts that everybody would recognize, and or some that would synergize with the set. And this is kind of both. Elsewhere Flask was kind of an iconic card from Shadowmoor, and it works really well in the set because there's cards like Corrupt that are like deal damage equal to the number of swamps you control to something. So with the Elsewhere Flask, all of a sudden, even if you're in a 2-color deck, you can just say, okay, all my lands are swamps this turn, and you can get the full value off the Corrupt. So Elsewhere Flask is a really cool card. I don't think it's the best card. The best is like Scrapworks Rager here, or Transmigrant Altar. Actually, in a slower game, you can get a lot of value off this card, sacrificing whatever you unearth over time, stealing opponents' cards and sacking them and stuff. pretty good stuff. I might actually go with the Transmigrant Altar here. So pack 1, pick 6. Here is the Sibling Rivalry, which is the red active treason effect for the format. It's the way that you steal an opposing threat and then sacrifice it to your Transmigrant Altar. This works really well if you have some Powerstone tokens around, because you can use the Powerstones to activate the Transmigrant Altar's ability. So you have that extra mana left behind. I think Sibling Rivalry in this deck with Transmigrant Altar looks like it would probably work pretty well. We can roll with that and stick to red for now. Mask of the Jade Crafter is another card that seems great with Power Stones, and just in a green ramp deck in general. Combat Courier is good. Lots of stuff looks good here, but I'm just going to stick to mono red for now and see where that takes up, how the deck ends up working out. Okay, pick 7. Scrapwork Mutt looks fine. 2 mana for a 2/1. We can discard a card and draw a card when it enters the battlefield. We can also unearth it later to do that again and hit our opponent again, which is pretty good. Prowess is a relatively strong ability, so a 2 mana 1/3, very unexciting, but give it Prowess, it's kind of okay. Give it Prowess and Ward 2, that might be better than the Mutt. But I'm probably going to go with the Mutt. Gaia's Courser also looks like a pretty good card. If you have any self-mill, and there's a good amount of self-mill in the format, Courser could relatively consistently draw a card every time it attacks. Alright, pick 8. It's got to be a pretty good symbol for white if we see that Prison Sentence is still in here. This is a better version of Arrest. It's 3 mana for an aura that you enchant a creature with, and that creature can't attack or block or use its activated abilities. And you scry 2 with this card, which is absurd. So Prison Sentence, really, really, really good removal, it looks like. And I'm going to scoop that up here, and maybe we are red-white aggro. Conscripted Infantry seems like a fine deal. A 3 mana 3/1 has low toughness, so it's going to trade off with pretty much anything. But what makes this playable is the fact that it gives you something back when it trades off. You do get a 1/1 back out of it, so not horrible. Probably go for that. Mishra's Domination does not seem particularly incredible, nor does the Veteran's Power Blade. All these kind of +2/+0 sort of equipments haven't really played well in recent limited formats, because there's just so much mana in comparison to what they used to be. You know, Skull Clamp used to just be 1 mana to play it and 1 mana to equip it, which was incredible. So we could pick up a second copy of Sibling Rivalry to go with the Transmigrant Altar, but we could also take a Disfigure, which is also incredibly late, so that's a relatively good sign for black. I'm going to go for Disfigure here. I don't think we're going to be hurting for extra copies of Sibling Rivalry. Seems like the kind of card that's generally going to go late, but Disfigure being this late feels like somewhat of a sign. It's also an instant speed combat tricky sort of removal spell, so it works really well with Monastery Swiftspear, so I'm pretty into that. Now we have a Disenchant, which I think is good in this format because there are plenty of massive game-ending artifacts and enchantment-based removal spells like Prison Sentence. Or, because we saw Disfigure so late, could move into black here with Gixian Skullflare, go for like black-red Sacrifice, black-red Self-Mill. I'm going to move to black here because I think Skullflares are really fun common to try to build around, because this sits there and gets a +1/+1 counter every one of your upkeeps if you have 3 or more creatures in grave. That does not feel that hard to do. Take a raise to the ground here. Again, as I said before, I think it's fine to main deck 1 in this format, and especially with Liquid Metal Coating, it could do some nasty things. Now I'll take a Falaji Chain Dancer, 4 mana 2/4 double strike, if we have the mana to put into it. Phalanx Vanguard seems great. 2 mana 2/2 Vigilance with upside. Sure. And 3 mana 1/4 lifelink, not horrible. Okay. Opened up some pretty good white stuff here. We've got Allegiance to Ashes in white-black. Exile on non-land permanents and all tokens with the same name as that permanent, so yeah, that's very good removal, but it is white-black, so I'd have to be red, white, and black. I'd have to splash in white and black here. I have decent removal already, and Combat Thresher looks like a pretty great card. 3 mana for a 1/1 double strike that draws a card when it enters the battlefield is nice, and that's the prototype cost. And then if we're flooding out and we draw this in the late game, we have a 7 mana 3/3 double strike that draws us a card. That's less of a good deal, but the back half of the card is much less important than the first half of the card, because the back half is just the backup plan. That's just if you're flooding, then it's bigger. So I think Thresher looks pretty good here. And I might commit to red-white now. There's also an Excavation Explosion, though, and that's the only card we're 100% going to play. I'm actually going to be a little boring and go for Excavation Explorer, or Excavation Explosion there, and not commit to white or black yet, in case we get past like a sick black rare. Like if we got past a Gix here, I would still absolutely swap to red-black instead of red-white, but instead we got past a Lauren, which is a very good white card, a 4-mana 3/3 when it enters the battlefield, or another legendary enters the battlefield. Return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. So a Gravedigger for artifacts, and it's a 4-mana 3/3. Seems great. Add it to the deck here, move to red-white. Although there's also a Goring Warplow for red-black. 2 mana for a 1/1 Death Touch, or 6 mana for a 5/4 Death Touch. Very flexible card there. Also, Prison Sentence? Wow, this pack's just absurd. I didn't even notice the Prison Sentence. It's actually difficult. Prison Sentence versus Lauren. Don't have too many artifacts yet. I might actually want the Prison Sentence. A little too late now, because I couldn't find it in the pack again, but I probably did want that Prison Sentence. So pick 3 now. Perilous Vault from the Historical Artifacts collection. Just exile all non-land permanents. Costs 9 mana total to do it, but that is huge, obviously. Massive, massive effect. Stonebrain does like nothing. Penregan Strongbold's a great way to sack some Power Stones in the late game. Might be kind of dumb. I'm just going to go for Perilous Vault. It's the strongest card in the pack, even if it doesn't make a ton of sense in a red-white aggro deck. Enough Power Stones, maybe we get there. Tokazi is welcome. Whenever one or more creatures with mana value 3 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card once per turn. So it does work with tokens, but only once per turn. Excuse me. Mana value 3 or less deck here, get really aggro. That's such an awkward card, because generally, I'm going to try it out, but if I'm running nothing but like 3 mana value or less creatures, I'm not going to want to take turn 3 off to play a card that doesn't impact the board. I would rather just put a creature with power and toughness on the board to stay aggressive. So I don't know how that's going to play out. That seems a little awkward. Seems like just a way worse version of like the Welcoming Vampire from Crimson Vow, but I guess we will find out. Oh, a little life gainer. Yoshin Frontliner actually looks pretty good. 1 mana, 1/1. Every time it attacks, another creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. You unearth it for only 1. Not incredibly high impact, but if you have 2 creatures on board, you're getting 2 power and toughness for that 1 mana, and it unearths really cheap. So super cheap to get it back again. I mean, we just took Tokazi's Welcome, which wants us to really play a lot of cheap cards, especially ones with Unearth. Ones with Unearth will work really well with that, so I'll take this little Yoshin Frontliner Dork, and we'll try that card out. I don't know if this Transmigrant's Altar is going to end up making the cut. I do like the idea of Conscripted Infantry with Tokazi's Welcome, because now if this card trades off during our opponent's turn, we get a 1/1 soldier onto the board and we draw a card during our opponent's turn. So that's kind of neat. It's kind of neat. I guess Scrapwork Cohort works really well with going wide, but it doesn't work with Tokazi's Welcome. I'll just go for another infantry. +1/+0 flying. There's that Strong Bull that I think is a pretty cool way to sacrifice your Powerstone tokens late game. This also lets you get a tiny bit of extra value off of your Unearth artifacts, because they're going to get exiled at your end step anyway. You might as well get an extra 1 point of damage with that deal damage to opponent's ability. I think I really want to make sure I have enough 2-drops though, so I'm going to take a Phalanx Vanguard. Okay. Prison Sentence, pick 8. I'm going to take that here, but if we were red, white, and black, if I'm splashing in a little bit of black here, Hero of the Dunes is a huge card. 5 mana for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, return an artifact or creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And creatures with mana value 3 or less get +1/+0. Good lord, this card's disturbingly good. Feels like aggro might be a bit too strong when they're trying to get us to play all these big Powerstone stuffs. All these gigantic prototype artifacts and stuff with Powerstones. Onulet seems like a fine late game dork. Symmetry Matrix lets us draw cards off 2/2s and 1/1s and stuff. I don't actually have a ton of super symmetrical creatures, but that's kind of interesting to me with 1/1 tokens, if we get a lot of 1/1 tokens. I think I'm just going to take another scrap work mutt here, play around with that. I'm getting a little scared seeing all these really, really good aggro stuff, because it would be monumentally disappointing to me if the format with 10 mana common creatures is one where it just doesn't matter because every deck is just a really good aggro deck instead. But it is still very, very early in the format. I've only done one other draft, but in that one other draft, 2 of the decks that were by far the best were hyper aggressive. And this draft, I'm trying to draft something super, super aggro here again. I like the Airlift Chaplain over the 2-drop dork there. The 2-drop dork is good as well. Looks like we're getting less cheeky, like probably not using liquid metal coating, raised to the ground type stuff, because we're getting a lot more focused here on being a good aggro deck with just very consistent removal. Because we have double Excavation Explosion, Obliterating Bolt, and double Prison Sentence. So I feel like those are gone. Probably Sibling Rivalry, Transmigrant Altar should be gone here as well. And then Takazi's Welcome, Symmetry Matrix, and Perilous Vault are all pretty big maybes. But this is a full deck right now, 22 cards already, so everything we take, we're just making the deck better from this point on. Pretty easily the rare here, I'm imagining. Disregard Urza Planeswalker. We're not going to open the Mightstone and Weakstone and the Urza that melds with it. But this is basically 5 mana. You get to either draw 2 cards or give something -5/-5 till end of turn. And then you have a mana rock sitting around that can only cast abilities or non-artifact spells. I'm sorry, abilities or artifact spells. But yeah, 5 mana, -5/-5 is not horrible, and this is more flexible than that. You can just use it as a draw 2 if you need. Seems good for pretty much any deck. A little bit slow for a really aggressive deck like what we're running, but still probably good. Mishra's Research Desk seems like okay card draw. The flavor around this is that you're like sifting through the mountain of paperwork on the desk. And then you find the paperwork and you sack this, but then later on when you unearth it, it's like you're digging deeper, which is really cool. It's very cute flavor. But yeah, we have potential recurable card draw like Takashi's Welcome, Symmetry Matrix. So I don't think I'm going for that. I'm just going to take a Disenchant, I think. Well, no, our removal is so good. I don't know if we're main decking 1 Disenchant. But I don't know if I'm main decking Mishra's Desk. Nothing here feels like a guaranteed main deck. I'll take the Research Desk, I guess. That's the weirdest card, the one that would be most interesting to see how well it plays. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put up to X artifacts and creatures with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. You dig 7 cards deep? Mana value 3 or less artifacts. That's probably strong in a deck built around mana value 3 or less. I'm going to try it. I don't know. 7 cards deep? Another Monastery Swift Spear is definitely strong. I know that card's good. So I will take that card. Take Flight looks like a really good aura in this format, giving something +1/+0 flying and making it so it draws a card every time it attacks. As long as you play it in an instance where your opponent is initially tapped out, so that you know you get 1 card back out of it before your creature dies, you're going to be pretty happy with the card, because then if they don't immediately blow up the creature, you're just taking over the game. So I'm going to take this Monastery Swift Spear, though. Door to Nothingness got the reprint. Really cool retro artifact again. Thopter Architect could be a potential finisher, giving your board flying as you're playing more artifacts later. A little slow, though. Blitz Automaton looks pretty great. 3 mana for a 3/2 haste, or 7 mana for a 6/4 haste. The vast majority of the time, you're going to play it as a 3 mana 3/2 haste, but this makes it a better top deck. So treat it as the main card as a 3 mana 3/2 haste, but it has like a kicker to make it gigantic. Don't think of it as, oh, I'm running a 7-drop. It's like, no, you're just running another 3-drop. But on the rare occasion that you draw it with a ton of mana out, it is way more impactful than it would have been. Argivian Avenger's interesting. Get whatever ability you're interested in every turn. Pretty slow for our deck, and I am trying to up the amount of 1, 2, and 3 mana cards for that one rare, but it looks like the best thing in the pack. Oops, that was not the card I thought I was highlighting. What is our red to white count? Exactly even on red and white, so I could run a good chunk more red sources if I want, if I get really interested in this. Cliff's Number, you need 4 mountains to get this going, though. It's the kind of card that's probably great if you open it up in pack 1, because then you can really build around it, but needing 4 mountains on the board for it to do anything is pretty rough. I'm going to take the Recruitment Officer instead. 1 mana for a 2/1, already fine for an aggro deck, and this lets you just draw more cheap creatures if you have nothing else to do with your mana. Dig for them for 4. Pretty cool. We've got a good chunk of artifacts, so the Tumakul Scrapsmith probably actually does some stuff here. Mill 3, pick up an artifact. If we don't, 3 mana 3/2. It's not good. A 3 mana 3/2 is not good, but we can accept that fail case because sometimes this card's going to be very good. It's going to be a 2/1 and we draw a card. I guess we're taking the Power Blade here. I assume we have a lot of soldiers in the color pair. Yeah, we have 9. I don't think I'll run it, but we'll find out. It's an option. Another Sibling Rivalry versus some Wings. I do have Double Altar, but I don't feel like I'm going all in on that when I have such an aggro curve of cheap stuff. I might go for Wings here, because then once our opponent clutters up the board and gets to block all our cheap creatures, we just start sending them in the sky for the final couple points of damage. Onslaught looks like an okay trick. We already have 1 raise to the ground, and Energy Refractor doesn't do anything for our deck, I don't think, so we'll take an Onslaught, but I'm probably cutting it. 5 mana for a 2/4 haste. When it enters the battlefield, put up to 1 card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. Interesting. I'm not going to run 2 Mishra's Onslaughts, so I guess I'll pick that up. Some late Giant Growths. Nobody's in an aggressive green strategy here. Yeah, we're going to go for some basic aggro stuff here. We have got a suite of very cheap removal. So if we just back that up with a curve of aggressive creatures, that's a way to win games in pretty much any limited format. So let's just get the deck pretty focused on that. Just a good curve of creatures and removal. And kind of cut down on all the more silly or slower strategies in here. Get very streamlined, aggressive. So yeah, Perilous Vault's probably too slow for what we're doing. Matrix, Onslaught. Reconstruction, I assume, is probably too slow as well. As honestly as probably Takazi's welcome. Argivian Avenger. Okay, so we cut like all of this slow stuff. I still need to cut 2 more cards, and then I would cut Reconstruction here. I've got a lot of 3 mana nonsense. Maybe Takazi's welcome. Cut a 3-drop out of here for sure, at least one of these cards. Let's give everything its chance to shine. So we'll cut 1 of these infantries so we can play, 1 copy of everything else there. And then, I guess these aren't that expensive. Reconstruction we could cast at 4 mana even, so maybe we cut a land and go for a 16-lander. I do have a couple Scrapwork Mutts that can discard a non-land to draw another card. Hope for that land. We're only going 1 land down, which doesn't affect the odds of drawing a land that drastically. Going from 17 to 16. Yeah, I think we do that. Something like this. Triple white is a hard sell. If I'm cutting anything, it's reconstruction. Maybe I cut reconstruction to put the 17th land back in, or I cut it to put something else in. I want to try this card out, but we have equal amounts of red and white cards here, so I kind of want to run even. I want to run an 8-8 split, and I can't really do that with reconstruction and expect to cast this reasonably early in the game. "16 creatures. Could run the wings. Really slow card though, but it does end the game. I guess I can go for the research desk here. We'll try that one out instead. A little bit of card draw there. Go even on the 2 colors, and this will be the deck. Alright, here we have a look at the final deck we're going to be playing with today. This is a red-white aggro deck with a very efficient curve of aggressive creatures. A lot of good 1-drops, 2 Monastery Swiftspear, Recruitment Officer, and Yoshin Frontliner to get things started with a lot of damage for a very cheap entry fee. Couple filler 2-drops, and a bunch of great 3-mana dorks as well. So we're just trying to slam a bunch of power and toughness onto the board as quickly as possible with this mountain of 1s, 2s, and 3s, and back it up with a ton of removal to keep anything that is too big out of the way to keep getting damage in. Obliterating Bolt, double Prison Sentence, double Excavation Explosion, and the Might Stone and Weak Stone, all pretty good ways to just blow some stuff up, get it out of the way, and keep the damage coming in. So we started our first draft with a very slow, very rampy looking deck, and we've gone the hard pivot after our first draft experience to a really aggressive deck, and we'll see which kind of strategy shines more as we head into the gameplay today. Here we are in game 1, unfortunately not on the play, because if we were, this hand would be beautiful, but it's still pretty good. We're definitely going to keep it. Start off with a 1-mana 2/1 and drop a haste creature alongside it turn 2. Opponent is going to flash in a Goblin Firebomb, which they can spend 7 mana, tap, and sacrifice to destroy target permanent. So if they get a lot of Power Stones, that'll be the quickest way to sacrifice that. I might actually go for a Scrapwork Mutt here over the Swiftspear because I'm a little flooded. 4 lands, a little more than I need right now. So we'll see if we can draw another non-land card here. Another land. Well, we got one of them out of the way. Just a second. I don't know why desktop audio is not working at all. Test. Okay, hopefully desktop audio was working before for you, but it definitely should be now. Killzone Acrobat from our opponent, a 3/2 that lets them sack an artifact to give it flying till end of turn as it attacks. Interesting. I'm pretty okay with trading anything into that. Probably, I guess not Recruitment Officer. Prefer to keep that around and just use its ability. So let's just send in the Mutt, which is definitely a good trade. And then drop down a Scrapsmith and see what we hit. We did mill an artifact, so we can put that in our hand, or we can make this a 3/2. I'd rather put that in hand here. Although it does have an Unearth ability, which is pretty nice, so it would have been decent either way. But when they have a 3/2 on board, this is already going to trade into it 2/1 or 3/2 stats. Burnished Heart from our opponent. Very cool to see the retro framed creature on the board. That's very cute. But yeah, very powerful card. Sack it to get 2 basic lands that share a type and put them on the board. Costs 3 mana for them to do that though, so if I kill that before, they can't afford it. Don't think... I mean, I'm up in cards now, especially with Mishra's research desk, so I probably should let them trade into the Recruitment Officer at this point. Got a ton of removal, so I'm going to kill whatever's left here if they don't trade it off. Okay, so we are going to kill that Burnished Heart. I'd like to do it with Explosion since that kills it and sets up my mana. And then we'll play the Research Desk. Another Firebomb from our opponent. A lot of mana to pop that off, and they don't have any Power Stones yet, so those aren't going to help. Ooh! Well, Tune Dispenser probably does. Beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card, and it can spit out soldiers. That's an activated ability to do that. So if we Prison Sentence it, it's just straight gone. Yep, can't use the activated ability. It can use the triggered ability that lets them draw cards, but that's about it. So let's haste out a Swift Spear here and just get in. I don't have any artifacts in grave yet, but I can sack the Research Desk and then use Lauren to bring it back to my hand. Obliterating Bolt on Scrapwork Mutt is going to exile that, so I can't reanimate it. Okay. Buff the Swift Spear if I play the Welcome. I think I'm just going to pop the Research Desk and see what we're going to get here. Alright, Phalanx Vanguard. So I can cast that this turn. And I can Obliterating Bolt if I really want to prowess. I don't think it's worth it. And now I can cast Lauren later and put the desk back in my hand to get two spins of it. But opponent is going to scoop them up. They're just out of stuff to do. We've dealt with everything they put down on the board to block, and they just didn't make it to the mana they needed to use those expensive goblin removal spells. So we're going to start off 1-0 with the Boros aggro deck. This is actually a pretty slow hand for us. I don't think it's worth a mulligan though, because our spell quality is really high. Obliterating Bolt, Excavation Explosion, Philagi Chain Dancer, and Blitz Automaton. But we do not have any of our 1 or 2 mana creatures here, which is awkward. It is not ideal. There we go. Ask and you shall receive. We're immediately going to get a Yoshian Frontliner, so we do have something to put on the board turn 1. It is awkward by itself, it's just a 1/1, but still get it onto the board here. Do something with our mana in the early game. There's a Mask of the Jadecrafter from our opponent, so they're probably running a pretty similar deck to what we tried to play in the first draft, which was a slower green-black kind of ramp deck. So they're going to try to get to a lot of mana with this, make a big creature off of it. But it is a flexible card. They can sacrifice it just right now and make a 3/3, and then just unearth it very late in the game to get another creature. So if they just want to do some blocking, they can sack that right now. If they do, I'll go ahead and just Explosion the 3/3 to get out of the way and get a Mana Rock towards the Blitz Automaton. The Mana Rock also helps pay for Recruitment Officer's ability, which is cool. They are checking out that mask a lot, but Argothian Opportunist is going to be the play. A very good card. I expect it to be one of Green's best commons for setting up your mana while providing a creature that trades off on the board. 3 mana for a 3/2 and a Powerstone. Powerstone being the really spicy part there. I'm not a particularly large fan of any of my creatures trading currently, so I might just blow up the 3/2 here and get a Powerstone of my own. Hit for 4. Still got that damage coming in. Obstinate Baloth from our opponent. That is a very, very good card. 4 mana for 4/4 and gain 4 life is a huge way to stabilize. And our opponent feels pretty stable. They're at basically full life now. Luckily, I do have the mana to go ahead and play this 2/2 and shoot that thing at the same time in the same turn. I can also play the Haster here. Only 2 mana away from playing it as a 6/4 though. So for now, I'll just drop the Vanguard. Turn the audio down a little now that you can actually hear it. Alright. This opponent still has 4 cards in hand here. They don't need too much on the board to stabilize themselves and stop our aggro. They can even just sacrifice the mask, honestly, at this point. Because they can make it a 5/5, so even if I had another 4 damage removal in hand, it wouldn't clear out the mask's Jade token. What kind of token is it? Golem. Yep, they're just going to get a 5/5 token here. It's a pretty big deal. We're only 1 mana away now from blitzing out a 6/4 haste. But I think I'm just recruiting things right now. Because even a 2/4 double striker is not going to affect that. So recruit, and then we have 2 mana up if it's a 2-drop or less to cast it. So grab the Vanguard, and we have the mana to cast it. Good stuff from Recruitment Officer. Gave us something to do that turn. Get more stuff on the board when we do go wide. These are going to be 3/2 Vigilance the turn I play the Automaton. This doesn't feel like an absurdly good ability, or doesn't feel like an absurdly good position for us to be in here. Down a lot of cards, our opponent's got a lot of stuff, and they are the ramp deck, so I expect they have plenty of plays that can turn things around here and get a pretty solid lead on the board state, make it really hard for us to chip in for damage again. So I'm pretty worried. Scrapwork Rager's not horrible, but it's definitely not good for us because they are drawing another card here. But there we go, we did hit the mana for the Automaton. And their only way to kill this Automaton is going to be to trade it into that. Trade their 5/5 Golem onto that, which means everything else gets to get in here. If they go for that block, and if they don't go for that block because I buffed it, they have to take 7 to the face. So they have to take a ridiculous amount of damage here. So this way we're dealing 7 damage to them and they're out of creatures. Ooh, we're doing 11 damage to them, so they're dead to an excavation explosion off the top. Very alright with this. No, they are going to trade with Automaton. And a Vanguard to stop as much damage as possible, it looks like. Take 6. They have a 1 mana trick here. Giant Growth would keep their 5/5 around, I guess. Nope. Alright, take all that damage, go down to 8. I almost would have preferred, weirdly enough, if I just lost pretty much everything but my opponent went down to 3, and then I'm just trying to top deck an explosion. Well, that was definitely not a horrible way for things to go. Unearth only lets you get the card back for 1 turn. It exiles during your end step, so you cannot unearth defensively. You have to use it at sorcery speed and get the card to exile before it can block. So they don't have a good Phyrexian Rager play out of the grave. Gotta play something in hand here that helps block, and Skyfisher Spider it'll be. They have no other creature to sacrifice though, so nothing to get the ability to work there. With Scrapwork Mutt, I can make Vanguard attack as a 3-power creature. Frontliner can make Recruitment Officer attack as a 3-power creature, so I can activate Recruitment Officer, then cast Scrapwork Mutt, even if I don't hit something. And I did, I hit a Monastery Swiftspear, which is really nice. Scrapsmith is also nice. Actually, I think I'd rather have Scrapsmith here, weirdly. Because if I play Monastery Swiftspear, and then I attack with everybody, they could kill Swiftspear or Frontliner. I'm gonna go for the Mutt. And then we are going to attack with everybody. They probably trade with Recruitment Officer now, take 4 and go down to 4. Trade with the Vanguard because that's the highest power creature, fair enough. They gain some life here, hopefully not 1,000,000. 3, that's a pretty good amount of life. That spider's really good. Even though they didn't have a creature to sacrifice to destroy one of our cards, just gaining some life when it died was great. Trade it off and gain life. And they didn't have that much in their graveyard. They only had 3 creatures in their grave, but it still feels like a pretty big swing that they get to gain 3 life off that trade. It's a nice card for sure. I am very into it. And we're keeping the pressure on. We're still just kind of doing stuff every turn. A lot of things that can turn that around, though. A lot of very big prototype blockers. What is that? We both get a Powerstone token when they play it. Why did they unearth the mask? They might not have known how Unearth works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like 1 damage off lethal here. If I hit an artifact off Recruitment Officer, I think I win. I don't know if I have many cheap artifacts though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can just Prison Sentence, attack for 6. Probably the play. Scry first. See if I get anything from the Scrapsmith. Okay, those are not going to work with Scrapsmith. Now I play Scrapsmith, something that costs 2 or less, that's an artifact, would be perfect. These are all too expensive to cast right now. I'll take a Mightstone and Weakstone, I guess. But I do get to hit them to 1. Alright, so I didn't find lethal that turn. I would have if I had my Mishra's Desk thing, the 1 mana artifact, to trigger. Oh wait, what am I on about? They traded for the card I was thinking of that gets +1/+0. So yeah, I couldn't have had lethal there regardless. And they're just going to reanimate the Scrapwork Rager there to scoop them up. So it is going to be 2-0 for the Boros aggro deck. I was getting all my cards mixed up. I'm very new to the format. I was like, yeah, I've still got that +1/+0 artifact dork out, don't I? No. No, I do not. Here we are in game 3, undefeated so far with our Boros aggro strategy, and hopefully we can keep it up. Our opponent's on the play, so we don't get to absolutely steamroll our opponent with a massively aggro hand. But I'm still going to play as aggressively as I can. Get a frontliner down here. Next turn I get to play Swift Spear attack with both for 3 damage on turn 2. Yep, opponent did not play a blocker, so that's probably the line, although I could just play a Vanguard this turn instead. Hit them for significantly less, but I get the more expensive card out of the way for now. And then I hit them for a little bit more in the future. If I draw a Mountain, Swift Spear into Obliterating Bolt's pretty nuts. Disenchant on the 1 mana Unearther. I'm pretty happy with that. And that is a card we don't really mind dying that much. Really want to hit this Tokazi's Welcome. I think that card was going to be pretty absurd here. So I'm going to actually play the Mutt to +1 the Vanguard and discard the Infantry and see if I can hit a land here. We do hit a land, and it's perfect. It's a red source, so we can hit with Swift Spear this turn as well. And then we can welcome next turn. And then most of the creatures in our deck will trigger that card and let us draw a card off of them. Warlord's Elite, a 4/4 blocker. A nerd. We can shoot it down. Let's just get in for 1,000,000, I guess. Yeah, I'm missing out on a card draw from the welcome by doing this, but I'm fairly certain it's best to just hit for 1,000,000. I don't know why I decided in my head that a 4/4 blocker, that's the stat line of a nerd. But that's what it is. I'm a 4/4 blocker. It's Sometimes my brain just comes up with things and I don't know where they came from. They just kind of happen. I do not have the mana to do everything I want to do here, which is welcome into Chaplain. Opponent's at 6, we can hit for 3. We lose a creature. Probably just drop welcome pass. Well, now I hit for 4, put them to 2. Yeah, no, we hit for 4. Totally forgot about Prowess. Monastery Swiftspear is a busted card. I can see why that sees play in multiple formats. So they're dead to an Excavation Explosion now, and they're dead if they can't play another blocker. Decent amount of things they're dead to. They can't play another blocker, but I can't Prowess Swiftspear right now. But I do get to draw multiple cards off of this Chaplain. Draw a card from Tokazi's Welcome, and then draw from the mill here. It's another land, oof. Then we mill, and it's yet another land. I'm going to decline to get a 2/2 flyer, because that kills my opponent in one hit. Replaying Scrapwork Mutt next turn seems very good, actually. I should have double attacked, that was so dumb. Like, they have to block Mutt, even if I send them with Swiftspear, because they're at 2 life. That was a really dumb attack. I should have attacked with both creatures. The block on board was forced to be on the Mutt either way. So even though, yeah, I want the Mutt to die, I don't want the Swiftspear to die, they can't not block the Mutt, so... that was not good for me. Alright, this might be the concession for my opponents. Right, because they don't have a flyer removal spell, then Chaplain just kills them. I draw into Explosion as well. We're just going to play it safe and play every different way we have to win this game, so that if any of them don't work, if my opponent shoots something or they gain life at instant speed or anything like that, then we still have outs. Okay, cool. So now I get to attack with everybody. And they do not have the instant speed removal, so we are going to be 3-0 now with the Boros aggro deck. Here we are in game 4 with Boros aggro. No red source here, but the Mutt can let us discard a card to draw a card to try to dig towards it, and I have Tokazi's Welcome, which played really well last game, and I think it works really well with the Unearth cards as well. So I'm going to keep this hand. It's a little bit of a greedy one, but we'll see what we draw into here, and hopefully use the Mutt to fix the draws a little bit, improve the draws, and a second Scrapwork Mutt is pretty sweet. So we're going to discard this Chain Dancer here. Alright, third mana is good, even if it isn't the red source. We can just drop it to Tokazi's Welcome and draw a million cards throughout this game. (3/1) Ward 2, pretty okay with me. Play Tokazi's Welcome, and I'm probably actually just on blocks there. Opponent is on green-black, and they're up to 3 mana. They're going to Gix's Caress my hand. They make me discard a non-land card, and they get a tapped Powerstone. Sure. Probably drop the Mightstone and Weakstone, I guess. Maybe the Prison Sentence. They're definitely not discarding one of the red cards. Because I can't play the red card anyway, and the Scrapwork Mutt, if they discard it, I could unearth it later. And I guess they could still hit the Mutt, because they're scared of what I can do, where I can draw a card off Welcome and discard a card, draw a card. Just play a Phalanx Vanguard. Draw an Obliterating Bolt. Alright, now I've got a blocker for the Honor Guard, so we'll just get in there with the Mutt. Just make trades when the 3/1 sends in. If the 3/1 sends in. Trading here feels pretty good if my opponent doesn't have Graveyard Shenanigans, Graveyard Hate. We do have 8 mountains in this deck, and as soon as we hit one, these Scrapwork Mutts are going to get us really good value out of the grave when we have Tokazi's Welcome on board. Shoot down the Tokazi's Welcome, sure. Guess we made them spend a card to get rid of that. Let's get a Conscripted Infantry here. Because I don't have anything in my hand I currently want to discard. So we wait till we flood out a little bit, and then we start reanimating scrapwork mutts to discard extra lands to draw cards. So wait till I have 5 lands on board and then start drawing more. I do want to hit 5 mana with this hand. Argothian Opportunist, another Powerstone for our opponents. And they're going to pass the turn. These trades are okay. So I think I will just send in, although Obliterating Bolt is not particularly likely to kill any of their big stuff that they cast later in the game, and they have 7 mana already, so they're probably going to cast really big stuff that I need to Prison Sentence. I don't think I need to hold on to Obliterating Bolt, so I might actually do that so I can just get more damage guaranteed instead of trading a creature into their creatures. Trade the removal spell that can only be spent on small creatures. 2/3 reach, Death Touch. Alright, well there's another small creature, but if I hit just 1 mana, I can Mightstone, Weakstone that. We do... Let's see if we can do this. Sure can. Put one of our mutts on the bottom of their library. That's some value there for sure, but we put them down to 5 life now. Prison Sentence at the ready for whatever massive prototype blocker they're attempting to cast. Gix's Command, destroy everything, and return 2 creatures from their grave to hand. Pretty good. I think I still just have lethal though, right? No, not through an Ashnod's. Oh wait, no, that doesn't exile right now. Okay, I don't have lethal because they can play 2 creatures. I can only shut off one of them. I could play the Yoshin Frontliner from my grave as well here. If I discard it. Ooh, I definitely have lethal now. Excavation Explosion. I just need to hit them for 2. I can attack with everything, make sure everything has at least 2 power. Oh no, I can't do that because the Frontliner doesn't have 2 power. Whoops. Just barely missed lethal. But I don't think Prison Sentence gets lethal, right? It just puts them to 1. I put them to 1 either way. I Prison Sentence the Harvester, attack with everybody. They like block here, go to 1. Or I do this attack and then explosion their face and they go to 1. I mean, I guess they could block an away here where they die, but I doubt they will. Okay. Alright, I guess they die. Very cool with that. We are 4-0 now with Boros aggro. Kind of starting to feel like aggro is the place to be. Those were the, again, strongest decks I played in the first draft. The strongest decks I played against in the first draft, and it feels real strong in draft number 2 here. Here we are in round 5 against Lola Man, one of the best limited grinders on Twitch. Lola Man plays a whole ton, has like the most gems out of anybody from going infinite in best of 3 drafts and stuff. So very fierce competition here in game 5 with our Boros aggro deck. Pretty great opening hand here. Turn 2 Scrapwork Mutt and a ton of removal for cheap. So relatively easy keep. I don't know what these sleeves are. Pretty cool looking though. I think they're from one of the secret layers when an artist drew like another one of the artists as a wizard or something. So that's one of the Magic the Gathering artists or something. I don't actually think we're discarding a card right now. Awkwardly enough. This is our only turn 2 play here though, so we're still just playing it. Maybe a Disfigure from Lola. There is a Disfigure. Always feels good when your Unearth card draws removal from your opponent because you're just getting a little bit of value there. Blanchwood Prowler does mill a land for our opponent, so they get to draw that. So 2 mana, 1/1 draw land, very good deal. We have a Scrapsmith now. See if we get to draw anything. Land. Scrapwork Cohort. A 3/2 on the board feels pretty good to me, so I'm going to decline here, because a 2/1 on the board is really bad against their 1/1, so if I decline, I get to put the counter on it instead, so it can still attack into this 1/1, and because this card has Unearth anyway, it's not like I lost a ton of value there. Oof. Emergency Weld, very, very powerful card. A 2-mana version of Gravedigger, basically. You get a 1/1 and return a card from grave, and they return to Obstinate Baloth, the card that used to be a rare 4-mana 4/4 gain 4 life. Very, very good deal there. Don't have instant speed removal. Got plenty of removal spells here. Maybe I should have mutt and discarded that land here. I'm just going to cohort for the turn. So I'm not going to spend removal on these 1/1s. They probably just double block Scrapsmith. And then we just have a 1/1 chillin', hanging out. Cool. Baloth. It's on the board. 5 mana. Do I need 5 mana? No, I can bolt that and mutt. So let's mutt first. And we're probably going to bolt that. Alright, got a 2/4 to play. Put more threats on the board. The fact that none of our threats have really persisted here is kind of a big issue, because we've seen ourselves how many just massive plays the green-black decks can have, and Painful Quandary is a pretty painful rare for us that probably seals the deal. We have to lose 5 life every spell we cast or discard a card. Well, if I get a bunch of Unearth cards, that won't be horrible. Unearth doesn't count as casting, correct? Yeah, you just return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. So yeah, if we can hit more of our Unearth stuff, we can just discard the Unearth cards and bring them back later. Mask is very good here. I get a 4/4, then Unearth it and get another blocker. Yeah. Discard a Plains now. Quite want to get double strike here and hit for 5. I guess I'm losing 5 life this turn. I can only do that 4 times, so I need to... Even though I'm not like worried about their aggro, I do need to pay attention to when I choose to lose 5, because I only have 4 chances to choose that. Take a Vanguard, I guess. Yeah, maybe both should have went to the bottom. Ironclaw Crusher. That's like fine, right? We just shut that off also? Yeah, we shut that off also. Discard this Vanguard I just picked up and hit for 5, put them to 7. Or just go to 10. Just gonna go to 10. I think I'm gonna put both of these on bottom. Alright, because I would have to pay another 5 life or discard a card, I think it's actually better to double strike than it is to play this Vanguard right now. But I have lethal on board next turn if they can't put anything out, but we know they can at least make a Jade Golem thing. Yeah, they get a 5/5 now. Not great for us. Not great at all. If they couldn't play any creatures here, we could kill them with Explosion now. Alright, 5/5 Golem. It is a bad, bad time for us. I only need to hit Lola Man down to 3 life to win. So I need to get in for 4 more damage. Which is far easier said than done. What do we even have left in the deck? What am I looking for? Oh, I don't know. I don't have Untapped on. Because the set is brand new. It doesn't work yet. Okay. I could Explosion pre-combat on the Golem to get 2 damage in here, I guess. Because then if they block, I get to keep Chain Dancer out. This is awkward. But it might be where we're at. Yeah, I kind of hate doing this, but... feels like what I have to do. Now I hit them for 4, or I just kill this Golem without losing a creature. And this makes another top-decked Explosion lethal. It is awkward, but I am fairly certain it is our best line. Because if they do not block, they go to dead to a second Explosion. And if they do block, I get to keep my Chain Dancer on board while killing their Golem. Alright. They're dead to an Explosion. And that's where we're at. Yoshin Frontliner. Interesting. Let's do some research, try to find an Explosion here. Land and an Airlift Chaplain. A Flyer's scary. If I mill an Explosion, I'm going to be pretty sad about this, but outside of that, this should be pretty good. Discard a Frontliner and I get another haste card from the grave. I did not mill the Explosion, so whatever. I can put that in hand, or I can have a 2/2 flyer. Sacking an artifact to do damage to her opponent is pretty dang good right now. I think I actually put that in hand. Yeah, sack an artifact, deal 1 to each opponent is massive. Emergency Weld, is that a life gainer? No. Because I exiled the life gainer, thank goodness. Oh no, that's a life gainer. Boulder Branch Golem. Oh, but they can't return it because they can only return a land. So they send in with the 5/5 to put me down to where I can't pay a life anymore. I think I actually block here with Chain Dancer. Keep the artifact around for the Strongbow and keep the flyer around here. Draw into the Explosion anyway. I guess I just cast the Explosion first and see if it works. That would be the easiest way to do this. Alright. Explosion works anyway, but we had lethal in several ways. The plan, if we didn't have the Explosion, was that we could use the Yoshin Frontliner. Put that on the board. That wouldn't cost us a card or any life because it wouldn't be casting a spell, it would be activating an ability. So putting that on the board, and then that cost us 1 mana total. We would then spend 3 mana for the Strongbow and lose the life. And then I would have the ability to attack with Frontliner, making Chaplain 2 damage in the sky, and have the... Actually, I'd have 2 mana up. I'd have 1 mana from Mountain and 1 mana from Powerstone. I would tap this Powerstone to get 1 mana, sack the Powerstone for the Strongbow. That would be the 3rd point of damage. And then if something really weird happened and I needed 1 more damage, I could then tap the final Mountain to also sack the Soldier to hit for 4th point of damage with the Strongbow. So that was going to be the line if I didn't just top deck into the really easy win. That was the plan there. And if Lola Man did not have like instant speed removal or anything, we could have won that way. But I think Explosion was a little safer because then we don't die to instant speed removal getting shot at the Chaplain. So... wild stuff there. I was almost certain Lola Man could could stabilize there after getting the Painful Quandary down with the Jade Mask and stuff, getting multiple golems and stuff, but the aggro stuff just so powerful, especially with the Unearth, the ability to just discard our Unearth cards and still keep activating them from the grave, since that doesn't count as casting spells, but we're still kind of casting spells through the Painful Quandary. That was really cool. Having the Unearth strategy against the Painful Quandary feels pretty good. And now, if this were a regular Premier Draft, this is where I'm super happy, getting all of our gems back and then some. So we are in the money here. But of course, this is part of the early access event. I'm going to trickle in these little disclaimers throughout the video. Thank you once again very much to Wizards of the Coast for giving me access to this early access account. That is how I'm playing everything. Wizards was like, all right, here you go. Here's an early access account for early access streaming day. So, yeah, I don't need to get the gems back, but still feels good to get at least a 5-win run, and we'll see if we can keep it up heading into game 6, maybe game 7, maybe get our first 7-win run in the Brothers War in our second draft of all time. That would be pretty cool, but we'll find out now against Legend LVD, another one of the best limited players. LVD doesn't do too much limited content anymore on LVD's YouTube channel, but I still highly recommend it, especially if you enjoy constructed formats. LVD does a lot of brawl and standard, just like casual and fun brews and stuff there. Very zany decks and very nice deck builds. So LVD is going to be on a green-blue deck that tends to be like a rampy thing. What is this? Steel Seeker. When an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it is a land, reveal it, put it into your hand. Otherwise, put it in the grave. So you surveil every time. That is pretty good. I'm going to threaten to kill that by going full control into attacks. Alright, LVD does not care. LVD's like, yeah, you don't have a cantrip. Snap block from LVD. And then a pass turn here. Okay. So Legend's stuck on 2 mana here. That's pretty good for us. We'll just drop a Scrapsmith this turn, which is not an artifact, so I don't need to put it on board right now. Block the Swift Spear, take 2. Drop the Scrapsmith now. No artifacts for us, so the Scrapsmith just a 3-mana 3/2. And Legend's still stuck on mana, unfortunately. We get to drop a Cohort and our Vanguard becomes massive. So LVD quite likely to chump block Vanguard. No, just take 7. I guess Legend does really badly need lands, and the Steel Seeker makes it so if Legend plays an artifact, Legend gets to flip a land from the top here. So very fair to try to keep that thing around at all costs. Legend now getting to the point where he has to discard to hand size. Incredibly brutal for him. Not how I wanted to see our rematch go after last early access event. Fairly certain this is just lethal, so we go for lethal. Make it even more than lethal, get an extra damage just in case. And Legend very, very punished by the draws there. Unfortunate. Gonna be 6-0 now for us though. So we are far in the money heading into what could be the final boss if we win. And even if we lose, we've got a couple more shots at victory today. Here we are now in game 7, what could be the final game of the draft. We have a turn 2 Phalanx Vanguard. If I keep hitting lands, we have a really good 3, 4, and 5 drop as well. Although we probably won't want to cast Prison Sentence turn 3. We can cast the Research Desk turn 3 though, just to buff the Vanguard. So definitely hoping for more lands here. A little bit of a risky keep here, keeping a 2-lander, but we have a 2-mana play and another card that can hit a land off the top for us. We can play lands off the Research Desk, so this seems like a perfectly reasonable keep to me, despite it being a 2-lander. And it might be greedy to wait on the desk for the Vanguard. I should probably just play it turn 1 to get the initial investment out of the way so it's cheaper to use later. I was thinking about keeping it for the Vanguard, that way I get that extra damage off the Vanguard later, off the enter the battlefield trigger, but it's probably all in all not really worth it. Opponent starts off with 2 islands, heavy blue deck from our opponent. Now a Blast Zone, so mono blue still so far, and Blast Zone's a really scary card. They can put charge counters on it and get it to the point where it can kill all of our 2-drops. That is where it gets really bad for us. I'm just going to blitz out this Blitz Automaton and get aggro, hit for 6 damage if our opponent does not have interaction right now. Try to just put a lot of pressure on our opponent's life total while their board is clear. Could be a counterspell here. There is a double blue and 1 counterspell in the format. It's definitely some kind of interaction, but Blast Zone would make them hold right now, so they can put a charge counter on the Blast Zone. Get it to 2, so they can sacrifice it to blow up the Vanguard. If they get it to 3, they can sacrifice it to blow up the Automaton. And yeah, it blows up everything with mana value equal to the number of counters, so if I get multiple cards, it'll be really bad. So involuntary cooldown here is going to slow us down quite a bit. Not a huge fan of that. Definitely a huge fan of having Lauren to bring back Automaton later after it dies to make a bigger version. For now, I kind of want to just use Research Desk, look for something that costs 2 or less, or a land is fine here because we do have a 5 mana spell. I don't really want to load a bunch of 2-drops onto the board when they have a Blast Zone on 2. Strongbowl's really cool, but I can't afford to cast it if I choose it. Oh, until the end of your next turn. So I can play this next turn. I just can't play it this turn? Sure. Did I spend too much mana? What's going on? Why do I have a mana floating? Oh, it's only 1 mana to pop it. I'm going crazy. I do have the mana to play the Strongbow. I am a doofus. Just spending extra mana into the Research Desk. I was casting it, or I was spending the Unearth cost instead of just the 1 mana it requires to sacrifice it. I've actually been a really big fan of this Research Desk in this deck. With the Phalanx Vanguards, it's been great. Getting an extra damage in there while we're setting up our draws. Perfectly happy with that. So now we have 2 3-drops, which isn't perfect against the Blast Zone. Not like super into it. I might set up a Research Desk here. I definitely don't want to play another 3-drop or another 2-drop. Blast Zone, really, just the threat of activating that is slowing us down a lot. Even if I unearth this, I'm not like sacrificing it to the Strongbow or anything. I guess I'm just hitting for 2 and that's about it. Yeah, 5th mana is pretty good. I might as well use this for 5th land here. If I'm not doing anything else with my mana this turn, which I don't think I am. Yep, land and land. Perfect. That's what I want to see. A million white cards in hand, so we'll grab the white source. Pass. I'm going to blast my Vanguard or put that to 3. Put that to 3, and now they can blast my Bull and Automaton. But now that it's at 3, they can't lower it back down to 2, so now I'm free to cast as much 2-mana stuff as I want. Alright. Send in, force them to pop the Blast Zone to stop the damage here. Before I commit anything else to the board. Okay, do I want to spend 5 mana here? Because I could spend 1 mana to sack Automaton to deal an extra damage to them. But that's only good if I don't have 5 mana worth of stuff to do, and I do, so I'm going to let that happen. Because it's better to play Takazia's Welcome in a 2-drop and just draw a card this turn than it is to deal 1 damage to them and then just play one of those cards. I should be keeping that in hand. I have my discard a card, draw a card mutt in this deck. This card is played incredibly well. I'm very happy with this. I was unsure if I even wanted to put it in the deck, but even though it's like even though it's spending a turn putting a non-creature on the board, it still just gives you so much card draw in a deck like this with all the Unearth shenanigans that it's great. I'm not actually sure what I'm supposed to do here. I don't think I throw removal at the courier. I might just play Swift Spear Attack. I mean, it's just a bunch of removal, or I can Swift Spear attack here, and I draw a card if I do Swift Spear attack. And we get an explosion, which is beautiful. Again, don't think I need to throw it at Courier, but there's a more reasonable reason to do that now, because if I threw it at Courier, then I would get the Prowess trigger from Swift Spear. But they could sack the Courier in response, and I wouldn't get the tapped Powerstone, so still probably not worth it. Now I can play Loran and bring back my Prototype card, which now I can just spend 7 mana and make a 6/4 haste to really end the game if I just hit 1 more mana. Loran seems real good with Blitz Automaton in these red-white decks, because you blitz it out early, just get that aggressive haster, and it trades in or whatever. Early game, you're fine, and then late game, bring back that Prototype card, but now that you're in the late game, you're casting the big part instead of the cheap part. That's a very cool synergy, Loran with Blitz Automaton. And yeah, we're just going to get there. I assume my opponent was on a 2-color deck and just got mana screwed again, as Legend did in round 6, but a lot of pretty fair games today, like the game against Lola Man and stuff, where both players had a bunch of mana, had plenty of stuff to do, and we still find a 7-0 here with just a ridiculously good Boros aggro deck. The Unearth stuff is really fun to do. It's really great synergy, it's really great value. Every Unearth card in the format is an artifact, so they all work great with that 2-mana 2/2 Vigilance that gets +1 whenever you get an artifact on board. Yeah, I mean, we'll take another look at the deck here before I end the video, but very, very happy with how this one performed. Very, very happy. Yeah, red-white kind of artifact / Unearth aggro. Incredible efficient removal in the deck, probably being the biggest reason that we were able to win a lot of those games. Obliterating Bolt, double Excavation Explosion. The Excavation of Explosions obviously being huge. We shot our opponent's face with a couple of these. Prison Sentences as well, very efficient removal. So just a lot of really good cheap removal that you can play in your decks alongside a curve of aggressive creatures like we did here. If you want to play an aggro deck in this format, it is incredibly viable. So 7-0 today with a really cool red-white Unearth aggro deck. The big Blitz Automaton as well in there. Great stuff today. Very happy to see that. We've seen the two polar opposite sides of the format now in our second early access draft. We have seen a very slow green-black ramp deck, and we've seen a deck 0-3, and now we've seen a really fast, really aggressive red-white deck, and we've seen a deck 7-0. So we've kind of seen both ends of the spectrum here. Probably average it out in the next few drafts these coming days. Again, if you want to play the Brothers War yourself, pre-releases are happening right now this weekend at your local game store. This video is coming out on Saturday. There's probably a pre-release you could go to right now as you're watching, or if not today, tomorrow. And then it is coming to Arena on Tuesday. So very, very soon everybody will be drafting the Brothers War, but I am currently recording in the early access event, so thanks again to Wizards of the Coast for the early access accounts. Everything you see me playing with today was provided by Wizards of the Coast for this 1-day long early access event that happened on November 10th, 2022, but I am recording several videos in one batch recording session to release to you all through the coming days until the full-on launch of Brothers War on Tuesday. So again, that's going to end today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. We've got more Brothers War coming to you on the daily. I'm very excited for this format. I've been having a ton of fun, even in the 0-3 draft. And yeah, we'll have plenty more Brothers War drafts and sealeds in the future. That will be Tuesday's video is going to be a sealed, because there's a free midweek Magic sealed right when the set comes out, which is super cool. So yeah, great stuff on the horizon as always. If you want to stay tuned for any of that, you can. If you want the YouTube algorithm to just flood you with these videos, liking, commenting, and subscribing will up the amount of times these show up in your recommended feeds. Other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.